Welcome into another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta. My main man, John Schumann, is in New Jersey in the shadow of Madison Square Garden, the Mecca, where all the action was over the weekend. Not kidding, but just a little kidding. John Hart's behind the glass, as always, making it work. Listen, if you don't love the game of basketball, this past weekend should have converted you. I mean, not only do you have all these college tournaments going on as they're gearing up for March Madness, but the NBA is in complete crazy mode. Shu, I saw some things over this weekend that I didn't know I would witness this late in this NBA season. The Warriors made mincemeat of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm sick and tired now. I'm done doubting the Warriors. I want that on the record. Every time I start getting nervous, they plunder another elite team. So I'm done with that. Oklahoma City is the latest victim. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid went bananas. Both of them turning in epic performances in a great Eastern Conference showdown of elite teams. 52 career high, 52, 16, and 7 for Giannis, but Embiid with the daggers, 40, 15, and 6 for him in the win for the Sixers. And then Lou Williams topped the night by stroking a three-pointer to beat Brooklyn at the buzzer to close out the action. But the real low light / highlight for me was earlier in the day at the Garden. LeBron James, immortalized for all the wrong reasons on Mario Hezonja's mixtape, getting his shot blocked for the potential game winner with a great shove from DeAndre Jordan, by the way. I want to make sure people go back and look at it. But seriously, I am of the belief, John Schumann, that LeBron James should be nowhere near his jersey. I don't care if he's playing the Apollo. He should not be in uniform right now for the Los Angeles Lakers. There's no way he should have been on the court to attempt that game-winning shot if you're doing the right things by a guy who's played 8 straight times in the finals, 1 trillion minutes on his body. Why would you play him right now? You make the case for me, Shu, why he's still playing.
Why not?
That ain't enough.
Hey, in a few weeks, he's going to get the longest summer of the last 15 years or whatever it is.
Why not start it early?
Why not? Why? I mean, he likes to play basketball. I like to play basketball. I would love to, I'm not,
Don't put yourself in the
take every opportunity he can to play. He's got a chance to move up the rankings in all time and assists and points. Like, keep playing. Like, what's wrong with him playing basketball? I don't see any problem with it. There's only a few weeks left, and then after that, he's going to have a nice long summer. He can choose to go play for the national team in August and September if he chooses to.
You know what? Wait a minute. That's interesting. You think he would play in China?
I don't know. I'll be fascinated to see who signs up for that commitment. It's 6 weeks, basically, a commitment from the start of training camp to the end of the World Cup. Mm-hmm. And then there's a short turnaround. There's a real short turnaround between the end of the World Cup in China in the middle of September and then the start of training camp. So it'll be interesting to see who's on that team. LeBron is on he's on the roster. Yeah. The big roster. Something man roster. And,
I didn't even think about that.
It's his first opportunity to play for Greg Popovich. It's possible. I think
he might want to itch that scratch by then too. I mean, he might have sat so long for LeBron that he'll be thinking, man, I need to get back in competitive mode.
Possible.
Yeah. I didn't think about it.
I think the Olympics is still, especially being in Japan, maybe a more of an appeal for next summer. But then the Olympics are towards the early part of the summer where there's a short turnaround after the finals. So that's, I think guys have to sort of plan it out and wonder if they can commit to both years or if they prefer one over the other. And with the Lakers being eliminated or almost eliminated and obviously missing the playoffs, he's going to have plenty of time to rest before training camp even opens for the national team.
They are eliminated. Let's stop playing around.
All right. So with the Lakers missing the playoffs, he will have plenty of time to rest before national team training camp even opens.
All right. Let me take one more swipe at this before I let it go. One more swipe. If LeBron James were to suffer a high ankle sprain, tear up a knee, anything catastrophic in these last few weeks of the NBA regular season, there will be an army of people singing the song that, he shouldn't have been playing. Listen, in a league where preservation of the player body physical player body has been of the utmost in recent years. Look at the way the schedule's changed. Look at all the analytics we have on rest and why it's so important for these guys to preserve every ounce they can throughout the course of the season. Why would he be? Shoot, it does not make sense. Seriously, love of basketball or not, it doesn't make sense for a guy in his predicament, 34 years old, all the mileage, 3 more years left on that Lakers contract. There's no way he should be playing right now.
I'm not saying he should play both games of a back-to-back. Lakers have 2 more of those, by the way. So that's 10. So they have 12 games left, 2 back-to-back. So say 10 more games he plays. I'm not saying he should play more than 30 minutes in any game. But you could say the same thing about Owett.
You can't say the same thing about anybody else.
12 teams right now that are out of it, basically. 7 in the West and 5 in the East. You could say the same thing about any of the players on those teams.
But there's one guy who's done what he's done the last 8 years is what I'm getting.
I understand. Believe me, I'm the one who keeps citing that stat that he's played, 10,000 more minutes than any other player since he came into the league. But it's 10 games. It's not – It's I don't see it as a big deal, especially
okay, people.
If he was hurt, like if there was a lingering injury, then yeah, you take more caution. But if he's healthy, then he plays. Like there's nobody. I've made the opposite argument about Anthony Davis, but that's because that dude said he didn't want to play for that team anymore. Like he said, I'm out of here. In the middle of a season. That's a totally different situation.
You're so morally righteous on this whole thing. It's just pains me.
But you know what? The Lakers have 12 games left, opportunities to play spoiler, although when you look at their defense, they've obviously sort of let go of the rope. But you know what? It's a chance for him to play basketball. Let him do it if he wants to do it. If you're the team, you leave it up to him, but you limit him to a certain amount of minutes and to just one game of a back-to-back. But you leave it up to him as far as whether he wants to, suit up or not.
That's all right. Mario Hezonja appreciates it. He's got stuff to show his great grandkids one day about how he embarrassed LeBron James at the Garden. Good for him. Anyway, that was just my little mini rant. I figured I'd poke the bear about LeBron playing. I know we've done that the last couple weeks. Giannis and Embiid, how much would you pay? What would you give for a Sixers-Bucks playoff series? You want to see it.
I've said it from the start. I'll be happy with any series we get between Philadelphia, Toronto, Boston, and Milwaukee. I think it's going to be fun. And Philadelphia, Milwaukee would probably be a conference finals because Sixers look good for the 3 seed right now. But hey, sign me up. I'm ready. I'll be in Philadelphia for every home game they play, I believe, in the playoffs. So, I'll be happy to see the Bucks there. I'll be happy to see the Raptors there, maybe in the conference semifinals. So I'm ready for it. That was a fun game.
I'm furious that Joel Embiid has missed the time that he asked you, because he would have, had he not missed time, he had the potential to upset this entire MVP conversation.
Could be MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, and if he's and still a possibility going forward.
I'm gonna put it to you this way, and this is a question somebody asked me late last night on text. Of all these guys, when they're at their healthy best this season, is Embiid the best on both ends in the league? And I said, you know what? It's hard to argue. That somebody's better than him on both ends at their healthy best. I mean, he's so big, so nimble, so skilled, with so much working. Like, he's got all the tools working. He's knocking down threes. It's just a joke. But I mean, you could make a good argument. Best case scenario, everybody healthy. It might not be Giannis, Harden, whatever in that order, because I don't think Harden stacks up high enough defensively to be in that conversation. It could be Embiid at the top in talking about two-way players.
I mean, I would put Antetokounmpo right there with him. The difference on defense is that Embiid could make more of an impact given his size and the position that he plays. Protecting the rim is still remains the most important thing in the league defensively. And obviously he does that better than the other guys that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Offensively, I still feel like because of all the talent that the Sixers have and the fact that Simmons can't shoot, that we don't see Embiid being utilized to his fullest capability on offense.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like there's too many catches beyond, where he's catching the ball too often on the perimeter.
Right.
Versus it playing in the post more often, or playing. They don't play pick and roll at all, really. So he's not much of a role. He doesn't have do much as a role man either. So I still feel like they still have that dribble handoff action with Redick, where you can see him as a role man sometimes, but then often sometimes he's popping out. So yes, I think potentially if Embiid is healthy and being utilized to his fullest capability, I guess, and I'm not saying that Brett Brown doesn't do a good job. I'm saying that he's not perfectly complemented, I think, in the Sixers lineup. Then, I think he's probably the best and most impactful two-way player in the league. The Sixers have added Butler, added Harris this year, obviously to improve the team around him, but he just remains the difference maker. Like when he was out, they just were not the same team. And then he comes back and they win 4 straight and obviously get probably the biggest win of their season in Milwaukee on Sunday.
They did a beautiful job too of balancing each other out yesterday. Like Tobias Harris did not have a great game, but Jimmy Butler was really, really good down the stretch. I thought Simmons, despite being labeled a baby, expletive baby by Giannis, who, by the way, Giannis's trash talking game has improved tenfold. He might be the most improved trash talker in the NBA this year. The way they're learning how to play off each other's strengths and weaknesses on a given night, you have to have Embiid on the floor for that. And that's why these last 4 games to me have been so important for Philadelphia, because I think they are not the deepest in terms of quality of depth, not the deepest team of those East Powers, but they're the most top-heavy, star-laden team of those East Powers. And to me, that's what often carries you in the playoffs, is whether or not your stars show up and play big like they're supposed to. They've got the potential to me to be right in the middle of that mix because of what we saw from them against the Bucks last night.
Yeah, and the way Brett Brown plays his rotation, they always have 2 of those guys on the floor at all times. Like there's always 2 starters on the floor. He does not go to a 5-man bench unit. He doesn't even go to a 4-man bench unit. There's always 2 starters on the floor.
Smart, by the way. I think it's very smart.
So that lineup, that 5-man lineup, plays fewer minutes per game together than some other lineups. But I think they try to maximize their starting lineup talent by always have two of those guys on the floor. I'll say one other thing. The Butler point that you made is good, because I think he's an interesting one to watch with that group, just because he took a little bit of a back seat once Harris came aboard. Mm-hmm. And Brett Brown, I was at their game against the Kings on Friday, and Brett Brown said both before the game and after how much he wants Butler to be aggressive and to play his game within that lineup. And so he's an interesting, he's got a little bit, I guess he has the best sort of off the dribble skills of that group. And that, other than Embiid, has the best ability to get to the free throw line of that group also. And I think that's important.
Week 23 power rankings are out, Shu, as you well know. I think you did a nice job this week, too. I know I'm critical sometimes of the top 5. I'm not criticizing this week. Warriors, Bucks, Rockets, Nuggets, Raptors are the top 5. Very interesting. The Rockets, to me, are the team that's in that mix that I wasn't sure we'd see them climb like this. And right now, to me, they're in the thick of this whole mess. We've talked about Philly, and they're the team of the week. Obviously, the big win over the Bucks. The team to watch, though, is the one that intrigues me this week, Shu. Did anybody see the Spurs getting on this horse and riding it? 8-game win streak. Manhandled the Blazers on Saturday, and the Blazers got some tough injury news on C.J. McCollum. We'll get to that shortly here. The Spurs are dealing with the Warriors tonight, the Heat on Wednesday, and then a little road trip, to Houston and Boston on Friday and Sunday. I said it at the time, and I'll say it again. The rumors of the Spurs' demise were greatly exaggerated. Shout out to Bones Berry, doing his magic in the building now. How does this happen? Is this just
they're weird,
championship DNA dripping down as always, or what?
So when they got back from the rodeo trip, they were in 8th place, and tied with the Kings in the loss column. So in danger of, losing their playoff spot. They were 1-7 on that rodeo trip, and their defense was horrendous. Since then, they've won 8 straight. And in that 8 straight, they beat the Pistons, who've been playing really well, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Bucks, and the Blazers. That's, and so those 5 wins give them more wins over teams that currently have winning records than any other team in the league since the All-Star break. They're 5-1 since the break against teams that have winning records, with the only loss being their first game after the break, which was in Toronto. And so, they're just really, really good at home and not very good on the road. So all those wins against those good teams were all at home. Their 2 road wins on this 8-game winning streak were in Atlanta and in Dallas. The Hawks, as we know, are just hot and cold, and the Mavs are a team that has possibly let go of the rope a little bit. And so it's interesting because they are, so like I said, they're bad on the road. They're 1-9 on the road against the other 7 Western Conference playoff teams. Mm-hmm. And so their game in Houston will be a little bit, they only have 2 more road games against Western Conference playoff teams, and one of those is Houston on Friday. So I think that's maybe a little bit more intriguing to see than their game against the Warriors on Monday, to see if the Spurs can actually carry some of this momentum on the road, because they are just a total home team. And this winning streak has actually given them a chance to finish top 4 in the West. They are 2 games in the loss column behind the 4th place Blazers, with an easier schedule going forward than the Blazers. And like I said, I don't think home court advantage means more to any team than it does to the Spurs. And so, like I said, I've said it all year, they're a weird team. They've fallen off overall. They've fallen off defensively this year, but they're just a much better defensive team at home than they are on the road, which is weird. It's still 94 by 50 feet. You still have the same bodies, same personnel. It's just amazing how they can defend just so much better in San Antonio than they do on the road. Maybe it's the bats.
Well, I don't know what it is. I just think it's remarkable in a season where we've talked about all these different guys for Coach of the Year and this and the other. Pop's done another miraculous job to me. I mean, they were in a position at one point where you thought, not only are they going to, miss out on could they potentially miss out on the playoffs, but it would be an end of a run, kind of that playoff era and run for the Spurs. And now they make me nervous because they could give somebody fits in a playoff series depending on the matchups, and depending on where they end up. But shout out to Pop for they don't waver from what they do. And, for them to find themselves in this position, with the amount of time left in the regular season, they get to do what the Spurs always do, which is dictate their own outcome, which is, I guess, all you can ask for. The Malcolm Brogdon injury. And I know we're skipping around here, but we got a lot to get to. Out 6 to 8 weeks with a minor plantar fascia tear in his right foot. And this is a guy who was having a 50, 40, 90 season potentially here, had a chance to finish up like that. How monstrous of a blow is this to the Bucks if they don't have him for the start of the playoffs?
I think they can hold on to the 1 seed without him.
Sure.
I think they can handle whoever finishes 8th without him. But his timeline sort of puts the conference semifinals in doubt, and that's very far to look ahead regarding like a sort of an injury like this. But they started Nikola Mirotic against the Sixers on Sunday, and that obviously doesn't Brogdon's their best 3-point shooter, or has been their best 3-point shooter, but their 3-point shooting isn't necessarily compromised much when you put Mirotic in the lineup in his place. I just worry a little bit about their defense, because then they become, a few degrees less mobile with Mirotic in there. And I think it was their defense that sort of suffered on Sunday. That was one of their worst defensive games of the season against the Sixers.
They just couldn't. Neither team was really doing a great job of stopping the other, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think it hurts on both ends, really. He's not only his 3-point shooting, but he's just one of those guys. They space the floor, and it's not just for Antetokounmpo. Brogdon and Bledsoe are 2 guys that get to the basket, I think it was maybe a month or two ago, I cited a stat where they were near the top of the league in points scored in the restricted area for guards, both of them. And so they're losing a ball handler who can attack in off the dribble in space. George Hill doesn't have that speed and that attacking ability that Brogdon does. So I think they're going to miss him on multiple fronts, really.
So much of the playoffs, as you know, Shu, is about specific matchups and about how your key rotational players lock in for the course of potential 7 games with the guy at their spot on the other team. In this positionless era of basketball, if we are truly in that age, does it not limit a team or affect a team as much as it might have years ago when you've seen so many different permutations of player rotations throughout the course of a season? I mean, even when teams are healthy, they're trying, they're tinkering with rotations and trying different guys. Could you get by in this day and age without a significant player maybe better than you could maybe 5-10 years ago, you think? Or is that maybe stretching the envelope a little too much?
Well, I mean, it's not like he's the guy that their system is built around, right? Like their system offense is built around Antetokounmpo. Their defensive system is somewhat built around Brook Lopez being able to protect the rim, and their bigs being able to hang back and protect the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's not, he's just one of the pieces that fills in. But, with every piece you lose some of your versatility, right? Like now they're just they have one fewer option to go to at any point in the game. And, now a little bit more on George Hill's shoulders. And he has been sort of in and out of the lineup for a while, I believe, dealing with injuries. So he hasn't exactly established himself as a reliable rotation contributor for them just yet.
It's just interesting. I'm just wondering. I mean, I'm probably going overboard. What's what happens when you have a basketball-filled weekend like we had, where you just get down in the weeds. But I started thinking about that.
I mean, you can fill in the hole a little bit.
Yeah.
But like I said, like just every piece that you have gives you a little bit more versatility. And he's a talented piece. I mean, he was having a fantastic season. You talked about his shooting. But like I said, he's also been really good off the dribble, attacking in space, and is a good defender for his size and for being a smaller guard.
Well, and sometimes certain guys, to me, are they're maybe not the system's maybe not built around them, but they become linchpins into what you do. And I think we'll find out, I guess, just how important Brogdon has been or is for what the Bucks do. And a lot of these playoff teams are finding out now. It's kind of this skinning time where you're peeling back the layers to figure out who and what is going to be viable for you, in the immediate future, talking about that first round. Because this, from where I'm sitting now, this looks like it could be one of the more intriguing first rounds that we've seen in some time as well, in terms of, I don't know if we have a lot of answers as to who has slam dunk matchups in their series. Look at what Detroit has done with Toronto, and then tell me you'd want to see that matchup if you're, in the playoffs, if you're the Raptors. That doesn't, you gotta fire it up Dwayne Casey, and his team seems to have your number. There's just a lot of variables that could be at play come playoff time. So it makes the understanding of what each guy's role is on a team, to me, heightened as we wait to figure out who fits where in the postseason.
Yeah, the problem with the Pistons' 3 wins over the Raptors is that they've decreased the likelihood that they'll face the Raptors in the first round, because they're looking they're looking really good for the 6th seed, with Brooklyn 0-3 on their 7-game trip already, and then just still having the toughest schedule going forward. Brooklyn has only 2 games this week. They're at Sacramento and then at the Lakers. They need both of them, because after that they play 6 straight against like the top 9 teams in the league, and they haven't done so well against good teams of late. So their guards have all just been inconsistent. Karis LeVert is sort of getting to the basket but can't finish.
Right.
D'Angelo Russell sort of broke out of a shooting slump against the Clippers on Sunday, but has not been getting to the free throw line at all. And then Dinwiddie had been shooting relatively well off the bench, but then had a clunker against the Clippers. So they're relatively healthy, the Nets, but nobody has been playing consistently well for them offensively. And like I said, that schedule is brutal.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I'm going to be paying keen attention to, I look at it every morning, who's in what slot. And it doesn't change as dramatically from night to night as some people might think. But the trends of who might end up where in the bottom halves keeps me curious every day in terms of what I think might be the most intriguing matchups. It also keeps me on my toes about what kind of work we have to do with playoff previews coming up and kind of figuring out how you go about that. But I'm very intrigued, Shu, about, and this is my last question for you today, in terms of what do you think makes for the best and most compelling series as we go into that first round? Is it making sure that those top two teams, whoever they might be on each side, are separated and set up for a potential matchup down the road? Or is it the middle? And I'm always intrigued by the middle. Is it the middle, the 3-6 and the 4-5 matchups that pique your interest more, because those are going to be the series on paper, at least, that would seem to be tighter and closer and offer more compelling first round drama?
That's a good question. I don't think I don't try to get too caught up in the big picture in the point that the 4 or 5 series in the West doesn't mean anything because whoever wins it's just going to lose to the Warriors. I think there's definitely stuff to watch with all those teams just because, like Portland at 4, what would happen to that team going forward if they lost another first round series, right? And we talked about that with
yes, Joe Freeman, no doubt.
Joe Freeman last week. Denver, they've obviously taken a huge step forward, but how important would a playoff series win be for them? Houston, with how much they have invested in this roster, I think there's just big questions with every team when you really focus in on every team that we have that there is. Mm-hmm. I'll see where the chips fall and tell you what the most intriguing matchup is. But I mean, I'm excited about anything that happens in the Western Conference, first of all.
Right.
And then even in the East, I think there's, seeing the Pacers' resilience and see what they can do in the postseason is still interesting to me. And then things will really get fun once we get to the Eastern Conference semifinals. And it's not only which of those teams can reach the finals for the first time in X amount of years,
right?
But also how that affects free agency. Because you just look at those Eastern Conference teams, top Eastern Conference teams, and they all have significant free agents, right, this summer. Yeah. From Toronto with Kawhi Leonard, Milwaukee with Middleton and Brogdon, from the Sixers with Butler and Harris, and then the Celtics with Kyrie Irving. So I think that's what makes it just doubly interesting in the East is how it will affect what those teams want to do in the summer and what those players will want to do in the summer.
Yeah, I know one thing. There's 2 things in the East. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The interest is held in. In the West, my big thing is I need to see the 2-7 be Utah and Denver, because I have question marks about both those teams that I think would be best answered if they're matched up against each other. So that would, just for my own selfish purposes, I'd love to see that. And in the 4 or 5, if it's Portland and Oklahoma City, and I don't care what the order is, that gives me an opportunity to see a little bit more of Russ and Dame and to see them going at it and to see how Russ and whether or not he's evolved to the point where he's not going to let any of the emotional stuff that goes along with it get in the way of his playoff performance now. So I'm already, and it's a bad thing to do to start having images of the playoffs dance around in your head this far out, but I got all kinds of things I want to see come to fruition in the playoffs that may or may not happen based on what these teams do. But just for my own selfish interests, I got a lot of different things I want to see play out come playoff time. So it'll be interesting. Shu, I know I fuss at you a lot. I get under your skin. I send you texts late at night yelling at you about stuff or complaining about something. But I mean this sincerely. You are my favorite dude to argue and discuss basketball with. It's not just for show. This is not just a Hang Time podcast in our shtick. But I mean, literally, when I have questions about certain things, you're the first. I always think I got to ask you about this the next time we're on a podcast, or if I can hold it until then. Like other times I can't. As your DMs or texts would show. But there are certain things I really do. I need to get your take on it because it's usually a sobering opinion that pulls me down off of the ledge I'm ready to jump off of at all times, which I don't do it on social media, on Twitter, like some of you. And believe me, I read all of the tweets that you and the several other of our friends and colleagues are tossing out all the time. And I honestly don't know how y'all do it. To be able to watch and then jibber jabber like that on Twitter all day long is amazing to me. I don't know how y'all do it. Very much appreciate it. But I do. I appreciate you taking the time and indulging my foolishness on a regular basis here on the Hang Time Podcast.
All right, let's
want to throw that out there.
All right, we got 3 weeks to go. Let's just vow we're not going to talk about the Lakers again, whether or not LeBron plays, whether he continues to play, or whether he shuts it down.
Barring a catastrophe, I'm done. This is the last time I'm gonna beat the LeBron drum. I'm done.
I'm proud that we haven't brought up his former teammate, the one that plays in Boston.
Nope.
We haven't brought that guy up in a while.
I'm done. I told you I went on my rant. I'm done with it.
All right.
I'm not vowing though to stop talking LA basketball because I do want to talk about the Clippers in depth at some point. Could be soon. Could be later this week. So I'm just putting you on alert. I'm done talking Lakers. I'm moving on to the Clippers. And I want that on the record. Power rankings are out on NBA.com. Week 23 power rankings. Make sure you check them out on NBA.com/power-rankings. Check it out. John Schuman's hard work on display as always, every Monday throughout the course of the season. We'll be back Thursday. Deep dive on somebody. I'm not ready to spill the beans, but could be the Clippers because I'm very intrigued. Lou Williams, the greatest bench scorer in the history of the basketball universe, is up to his tricks. And I would be willing to entertain an argument, Shu, that he belongs on a long list, a top 15 MVP candidates. I know he's coming off the bench, but I would be willing to sit and listen to that argument if somebody
you could consider him for third team All NBA.
Yes, you could.
Guard.
It makes sense.
I know
he's been huge.
Bradley Beal is openly campaigning for that spot.
I don't blame him. But be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes all season long. Make sure you leave a review, and we'll see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast.